He smiled at me across the dinner table, pretending nothing had happened, but the sting of his words burned hotter than the candlelight between us. Street trash, he'd said, loud enough for every fork to pause midair. For a heartbeat, even the clink of silver stopped. I felt my cheeks flame while the man I loved sat frozen, unsure how to defend me. That night, I promised myself, no one would ever reduce me to rubble again. What he didn't know was that I already held the one thing that could shatter his carefully polished life. When I first met Daniel's family, I believed I'd stepped into a picture-perfect world. His father, Richard, owned a successful chain of restaurants. His mother kept their home arranged like a magazine spread. I worked my way through college waiting tables, and Daniel always admired my grit, or so I thought. That dinner was meant to be our official welcome. I wore a modest navy dress, nerves fluttering as I tried to impress them. Conversation flowed until Richard asked about my parents. When I explained they'd struggled, moving often to keep jobs, his lip curled. So, a stray, he said, raising an eyebrow. Then, more loudly, Daniel, you picked up street trash. Everyone laughed nervously, except me. My heart thudded while Daniel fumbled a weak protest. I swallowed tears and finished the evening, smiling through the ache. But inside, a plan started to bloom. Calm, deliberate, like steel cooling in water. Over the next week, I learned more about Richard's spotless reputation, the philanthropic businessman, the generous mentor. But I also discovered an unguarded truth. Late-night gambling trips he kept secret from his wife, risky debts hidden behind shell accounts. I'd once done research work for a financial consultant. Tracing patterns came naturally. Every receipt Richard carelessly left behind became a thread. By Friday, I'd mapped his losses and the hush money he paid to cover them. I didn't want money, only respect. My revenge had to be quiet enough to preserve Daniel's innocence, but sharp enough for Richard to feel it every time he thought of me. So I requested another dinner, framing it as an attempt to clear the air. He agreed, smug, thinking I wanted his approval. Saturday night, I walked into their dining room with calm composure. Halfway through the meal, I placed a small envelope beside Richard's plate. I thought you'd want to see these before they become inconvenient, I said softly. Inside were copies of bank transfers, casino stubs, and a single note. Respect is earned, not demanded. His hand trembled as he scanned the papers. The color drained from his face. For a moment, the only sound was the crackle of the fireplace. You, he began, voice breaking, but I held his gaze. I won't expose you, I said. All I ask is simple. Never speak to me that way again. And perhaps, remember that people you dismiss often carry more strength than you imagine. Daniel looked between us, confusion shadowing his eyes, but he understood enough to see the balance shift. Richard never apologized aloud, but the next morning he sent flowers with a single line. I underestimated you. At future dinners, he offered compliments instead of barbs. Daniel eventually learned fragments of what happened, though I never shared the full story. He admired the quiet way I stood up for myself without destroying his family. That night taught me something powerful. Dignity isn't granted, it's claimed. No insult, no matter how sharp, defines your worth unless you let it carve you hollow. So, when someone tries to cut you down, remember, you hold the pen that writes the ending. The question is, will you let their words bury you, or will you rise and make them remember your strength? Would you